Have you ever been on a team that just worked, where everything clicked? And then, have you been on one that was, well, the opposite? What makes that difference? It's not just luck. There's actually a blueprint for building a successful team. And today, we're going to break down exactly what goes into it.
So, let's start with that big question. What is the real difference between just a bunch of people working on something and a truly high-performing team? The answer isn't chance. It's actually a formula, a deliberate combination of specific factors. So let's dive into that formula.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the right ingredients. The people. Then we'll cover instruction and motivation. After that, we'll get into the actual team blueprint or structure. Then we'll walk through the stages of development every team goes through. And finally, we'll tie it all together with leadership and balance.
Okay, section 1. First things first, right? You can't build a strong house on a shaky foundation. And for any team, the foundation is the people. So step 1 in our blueprint is always about selecting the right individuals for the job.
Now, finding these people isn't about guesswork or just a gut feeling. It's a real methodical process. You start by creating a super detailed job spec. Then you build a profile of the person you're looking for, you go out and recruit, and then you carefully sift through resumes and conduct interviews. It's all about having a structured approach to get the best possible raw materials for your team.
But here's a fascinating curveball. What if you just found all the smartest, most talented people, the rock stars, and put them on one team? You'd think they'd be unstoppable, right? Well, Meredith Belbin's research found the exact opposite. These so-called Apollo teams, packed with superstars, almost always did badly. Turns out, individual brilliance isn't the whole story, not even close.
And this slide shows us why. A great team needs balance. You need different kinds of people playing different roles. You absolutely need that creative plant who comes up with 100 new ideas, but you also need that grounded monitor evaluator who can look at those 100 ideas and say, okay, these 3 might actually work, and here's why. Success comes from that mix of skills, not from a room full of people who all think and act the same way.
Okay, so you've carefully selected a balanced team. Awesome. What's next? The next part of the blueprint is all about unlocking their potential. And you do that with 2 key things: clear instruction and, maybe even more importantly, powerful motivation.
How you motivate someone really depends on what you believe about them deep down. Douglas McGregor laid out these 2 totally opposite views. A Theory X manager basically thinks people are lazy, dislike work, and need to be forced and controlled. On the flip side, a Theory Y manager believes work is natural and that people are actually self-motivated and want responsibility. Your core belief here is going to change everything about how you lead.
Now, this is where it gets really practical. We can actually design jobs to be more motivating. This model from Hackman and Oldham is amazing. It shows that if you build certain things into a job, like skill variety, autonomy, and good feedback, it triggers these really important psychological states in people. They start to feel like their work is meaningful and that they're responsible for the results. And what do you get? You get higher motivation and way better performance, all from just designing the job thoughtfully.
Let's move on to the team's architecture. How is the team actually put together? The structure has a massive impact on everything: how people talk to each other, how decisions get made, how work gets done. This is the literal framework of our team blueprint.
So at a high level, you kind of have 2 main options. On the left, you see the functional format. This is where you group people by their skills. All the marketers are in one department, all the engineers in another. It's great for building deep expertise. But on the right, you have the project format. Here, you pull together one dedicated team with all the different skills it needs to get one specific project done.
And even within a team, the internal structure can look pretty different. You could have a democratic team, where everyone has an equal say, perfect for brainstorming. Or you could have a more hierarchical structure, led by a chief, which is often necessary for really complex projects that need one clear vision. And of course, there's a hybrid model, where a leader gets the final say, but only after lots of team discussion.
Here's something that's really easy to forget. Teams are not static things. They're alive. They grow and change over time, and they usually follow a pretty predictable life cycle. Understanding this cycle is a game changer.
And this is the classic model from Tuckman. First, teams are forming. Everyone's polite, a bit uncertain. Then comes storming, and this is where conflict and friction show up. And here's the key: that conflict is normal. It's not a sign of failure.
If a leader can guide the team through it, they reach norming, where they figure out how to work together. That leads to performing, which is that peak state we all want, and finally, for some teams, there's adjourning when the project wraps up.
This brings us to our final, and you could argue most critical factor: leadership. The leader is the guide, the one who helps the team navigate all this stuff, the work, the structure, and all those developmental stages we just talked about.
Very broadly speaking, leadership styles fall into two camps. You've got task-oriented leaders who are all about getting the job done: schedules, results, checklists. And you have people-oriented leaders who focus more on the relationships and morale within the team. The best leaders, though, they can do both. They know when it's time to push hard on a deadline and when it's time to slow down and support the people doing the work.
So, as we put all the pieces of this blueprint together, the main thing to remember is this: amazing teams don't just happen. They are built. It's the result of careful planning, thoughtful design, and very intentional action.
So what are those key factors again? It's getting the right people with the right balance of skills. It's creating an environment where people are genuinely motivated. It's setting up a clear structure that makes sense for the work. It's understanding that teams develop over time and guiding them through it. And it's all held together by effective, balanced leadership. That's the blueprint.
So I'll just leave you with this final question to chew on. When you think about your own teams, past or present, which one of these factors do you think is the absolute linchpin? What's the one piece of the blueprint that if you nail it, everything else just seems to fall into place? Something to think about.